So it might not be directly relatable to this province, but I do think it has some impact on decisions we'll make here. And this is the race towards the finish line to be one of the first provinces and or proponents to build the wind farms to green hydrogen, ammonia for export, not for domestic use. So still plenty of questions and a lot up in the air regarding final investment decisions because the federal government are dragging their feet. Now we'll get to the Fed's implication here now in a second. But in Nova Scotia, they've approved their third and final one of these such wind farm, hydrogen, ammonia for export. So it's not massive when we talk about the scale of some of what we see in this province. So it's the Windy Ridge project, 49 turbines, 340 megawatt farm just north of Debert, Nova Scotia. So they say, this is Everwind, they say they hope to have the wind farms online by 2026. Okay. So obviously people who have environmental concerns are chiming in Nova Scotia just like they are here in this province. But herein lies a problem for the proponents, I would think, and it'd be nice to hear from the Everwinds of the world or John Risleys of the world about some of the updated forecasts with the value of hydrogen on the global scale coming from Natural Resources Canada. We know back in 2019, the Government of Canada was extremely bullish on the concept of global hydrogen markets. And here's some of the numbers they put forward. So they're talking about capitalizing in an exploding opportunity. They expected the global hydrogen market, to be worth $11.7 trillion by the middle of this century. So billions of dollars of public monies have been set aside, but yet the update coming from Natural Resources Canada themselves. These aren't people who are opposed to the projects in full. This is coming from the government itself with all their bullish forecasts on the value of the hydrogen market. Now they're saying, in this most recent report coming from Natural Resources Canada, they say by 2050 the global hydrogen market is now expected to be worth $1.9 trillion, a long ways away from the $11.7 trillion by mid-century that they described 4 years ago. So that's a reduction, an 84% drop from the estimate. So the same ministry, using the same, I guess, back 4 years ago, looking at it through very much rose-colored lenses. So even if you're fully in and want to approve and want to see these wind projects and the green hydrogen and ammonia for export power, you think with the expansion of the tax base and the jobs that will create, whether it be construction or in the long term, fair enough, because there are people out there who absolutely support these projects in full and look at the hydrogen market as a real opportunity. But Natural Resources Canada has slashed their forecasted value by 84%. So here's a quote coming directly from the statement. As with any nascent industry, there's a degree of uncertainty, especially with long-term forecasts, as each forecast is based on a number of assumptions. They said, that's Natural Resources Canada. The values provided in the reports are intended to give a sense of direction and a scale of potential opportunity for Canada when it comes to hydrogen. Okay, so even knowing this, the minister responsible currently is Jonathan Wilkinson. Just last week announced another $8.5 million for the hydrogen sector, going to Echo gas pipelines, New Wave Hydrogen, Aurora Hydrogen. But here's some of the complications where people may have a baked-in bias for one direction or another. Before Wilkinson entered politics, he was the CEO of clean tech companies. So he has a professional background and looking at the opportunities here. But his own department is kind of saying, hold on now. Now, some of the billions of dollars that have been set aside in the form of tax subsidies are only when some of these projects are operational. But if the government itself has seen a decline, whether it be the cars that are fueled by hydrogen cells, which has cratered when compared to other technologies that currently exist. So here we go. Here's some of the millions that have been announced. The federal government introduced a clean hydrogen investment tax credit worth $5.7 billion over 5 years, $1.5 billion clean fuels fund, and has provided hydrogen projects with over $300 million. And two of those are inside the Strategic Innovation Fund. So the two types of hydrogen we're talking about in this country are green and blue. And they all have different designated colors based on the fuel source to generate the hydrogen itself. Okay, Atlantic Canada, we focus in on the green hydrogen, and that's using, of course, wind power, which is, of course, the big wind farms, whether we talk in the Port-au-Port Peninsula or the Exploits Valley Group or Everwind or Pattern Energy, that's what they're doing. Blue, basically going to be used in Western Canada to use natural gas deposits to fuel their particular projects and ship to Asian markets versus European markets for Atlantic Canadians. So regardless of where you stand, and when we have these companies that are still sitting out there looking at the opportunity to raise capital, I can't imagine that this puts anything but a bit of a burr or a spur in their plans. If you're a traditional lender And some of these forecasts and values come from Goldman Sachs, one of the go-to traditional lenders out there that can indeed be built with the horsepower to finance some of these projects. About $11.7 trillion by 2050, now pushed back to $1.9 trillion. I wonder what that means for the projects here in this province. And of course, notably, the Minister of Energy is still Andrew Parsons, but the Environment Minister has gone from Bernie Davis now to Lisa Dempster. So I would like to know, governmentally speaking, and from the proponents, what this revised forecast looks like, because it seems to be a big deal to me. What do you think? Here, let's go to line number 4. Charlie, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
Paddy, your information on green hydrogen ammonia was, I thought, very alarming this morning. You mentioned that the projection they had was trillions, and now it's down 84%. I don't see how they can project accurately anyway.
Well, they can't, but they admit as much, though, Charlie. They say these types of forecasts come with a variety of and certain degrees of uncertainty as a nascent industry in its infancy. So they admit that part pretty much out loud.
It's so dramatic from what they said. I think what it shows, the business plan for this project is very weak. We don't know if at the end, if the consumer is willing to pay what we have to ask to make a profit. We don't really know if people are going to invest in this kind of thing. And certainly with information like this, that would discourage investors. So it seems to me that this project has... It's up in the air for what the province is committing in the way of land use and so on. Does it strike you that it seems to be a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of maybes and ifs?
Well, I think there's maybe not quite the absence of answers possibly on the environmental front, but on the business front, 100%. So I'd even go a step further, or maybe a step backwards, and talking about the end price point for the consumer. And of course, don't take it from me, take it from the Germans. They set aside $1.2 billion, 1.2 billion euro to help subsidize the end price point of green hydrogen. So that's one thing. And regardless of the end price point and whether or not they're going to be able to satisfy contracts, like World Energy GH2 has pretty much said they're only going to entertain 10-year contracts. And that makes a lot of sense to me when we talk about eliminating as much uncertainty as possible. But I think the biggest complication here is that when some of the numbers and some of the forecasts come from some of the biggest lenders on the face of the earth, and the government department involved, who was obviously quite bullish on this, I wonder what it looks like, the ability to raise the capital. Because if 4 years ago it was $11.7 trillion forecast by mid-century, now just some 4 years later back to under $2 trillion by mid-century, even still acknowledging some of the uncertainties, uncertainty is not the lender's best friend. So I think that this poses a major league problem for the John Risleys, the Everwinds, the Patterns of the world. Now, they're all created a little bit different with the size and scope and scale and horsepower behind the companies, but I don't know if the lenders like the look of this, and I can't speak to it with any sense of authority, but the numbers are what they are.
Well, two other factors. By the time this comes to fruition, that they can sell it, who's to say that there won't be cheaper and cleaner sources for Germany and wherever else it's supposed to be shipped? And the other factor is the cost of material for these wind, what do you call
turbines?
The wind turbines. That's gone up enormously from what I've been reading, right? So you've got two factors there. What would you say about those two?
Well, I think they're all directly connected, to be honest with you, because whether it be the price of materials to build the turbines themselves, and I still think there's some maybe unknowns about end of life for some turbines. I think some people believe that they are simply all going to be buried when the move towards some, the reusing of the composites inside the blades themselves and all the steel required, which can absolutely be repurposed, and the generator and all the rest of it. So I don't know if we can separate any of these cost concerns from one another, because they all lead into the exact same conversation, or end conversation, is how much capital required, what's the return on investment, and how can it be satisfied without government money? And the short answer to that is it can't. Well,
it's starting to get a muskrat smell. even more so than when the idea was advanced in the first place. Anyway, leave it at that. I guess we'll wait and see. I'd like to know who the hell is going to invest in this in the end. And certainly John Risley is not going to put up his hundreds of millions or whatever. There was a story on Rachel Maddow that I thought would bear repeating regarding rich people and stupidity. There was a guy by the name of Tim Mellon. He's the inheritor of a fortune there from his father, and they were going to look for the Amelia Earhart remains. I think they had some idea of where it might be.
I think they found it, haven't they? Or they think they have.
I'm not sure about that. There was pictures taken, but anyway, won't dwell on that one. But anyway, this guy Tim Mellon said, "I'd like to come along with you, and I'll give you $1 million." So they weren't going to turn down $1 million because the expedition is always after money. So the guy goes there, and they didn't have much success at this site. I guess it was a site where they took pictures earlier, and they go back home, and the guy comes on and takes the pictures that they had originally taken and finds in them a severed hand, 2 heads in cellophane connected to some nitrogen thing, and then rolls of toilet paper going back 75 years. Can you imagine rolls of toilet paper after 75 years?
Well, it's even longer than that. Isn't the wreckage 87 years ago?
Yeah, but they're talking about what happened in 2012. I should have said that earlier.
Okay,
right?
sorry.
Anyway, this guy gets on the forum, and he's promoting this, and they eventually had to ask him to leave because they were associated with this forum too. And then he sued them for $1 million. He had them in court for 2 years. It was eventually thrown out. But of course, the expedition people had to pay enormous costs for the court costs and so on. But here's a guy talking about these things, and all everybody else could see was coral structures and so on, right? But the stupidity of what he was claiming he found. And the reason she told the story is this guy is the main contributor to the Trump campaign. $70 million so far. He's also contributed to the Kennedy campaign, and we all know why that is. He wants Kennedy to run to take away votes from Trump, which is up in the air as to whether he'll take them from the Democrats or the Republicans, but it looks like he'll take them from the Democrats. So another Roger Stone trick. But anyway, you look at that and you think about Elon Musk when he said this planet needs more people, which I thought was the stupidest statement ever. He used to be what I would call a sensible guy, and everybody was applauding his work with electric cars and so on. But a guy got power and money and went to his head. Now he's a total nutcase.
I don't know. I'm not going to do much with that one. But I do know that Musk can attribute a lot of his business successes to government subsidies. I don't care if you're a fan of Musk or not. I mean, the math is the math is the math. Anyway, Charlie, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll give you the final thoughts. Go ahead.
No, Musk, when he realized that the Republicans, especially Trump, would give him more tax breaks, Biden was after him the Democrats were after him to pay more. That's when he became totally Republican. But anyway, rich people and stupidity. I used to think one time, I was naive enough to believe that if you were rich, you must have had the smarts on that, right? To get where you were and so on. And in the last few years, I've realized that was a very naive belief. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that.
Fair enough, Charlie. Appreciate the time.
Okay, sir.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.